Hi, this is Chris McKaylee, and I wanted to, on this video, walk through how to read a bill from the California Legislature. Now, we can all find lots of examples of bills, but I pulled two, one from the 2021 session, AB 1951 by Assemblyman Grayson, and one from the 2023 session, Assembly Bill 1373 by Assemblyman Garcia, just as examples to help you understand what you're looking for. So the first thing to be aware of is that in a California bill, when you have amendments, they're listed at the very top here, okay? So you have it as introduced. This bill was introduced February 17th, 2023, but as you can see, it had 4 different amendments. We list the last amended date first. So the first time this bill was amended after being introduced on February 17th, it was amended in the Assembly on April 13th, and then it was amended a second time on May 22nd, so that's above. Then it went through 3 amendments in the Senate, August 31st and September 7th. This is also what we call the 95th edition. What's 95? Well, the Office of Legislative Counsel, or the bill drafters in the California Legislature, call the introduced bill, the 99th version, and it's found here in the bottom right-hand corner of each page of the bill. How do we know it's the 95th? Because you count backwards. So the first amended version is the 98th. So 98, 97, 96, 95. So this is the 95th version of Assembly Bill 1373. Sometimes we refer to it most commonly as the amended date, the September 7th version of the bill. So again, amendments are up top above the Assembly bill or the Senate bill, okay? Assembly bill is on here. If it's a Senate bill, it'll say Senate bill and then the number. Same thing if it's a resolution, Assembly joint resolution, Senate concurrent resolution, Assembly constitutional amendment will be on this side, and then the actual number that's given by the desk. Next comes the author and the joint authors. Okay, this one's marked up a little bit. So amendment dates most recent on top, right? Note that this California Legislature and the regular session designation is only in assembly bills. So the SBs, the Senate bills, don't have those. ABs do. Again, either Senate or Assembly, that's on this side. On the left, on the right, is the number of the bill in this case. Then we have the list of authors. This bill, 1951, has a whole host of Assembly joint authors. That's when multiple legislators together jointly author it as opposed to co-authoring it or being a principal co-author. Now, every once in a while, you have an anomaly because a bill can only be introduced in the Assembly by an Assembly member and the Senate by the Senate, except under the joint rules with Rules Committee approval, we allow both of them. But note that the lead is always for the House of Origin. So this is by Garcia and Ting. And then in regular type and Senator Becker. Normally, you would never see that senator because it's an assembly measure, but if they get special disposition, they can do that. Next up are what we call the principal co-authors. So they're joint authors, okay? These three, Garcia, Ting, and Becker, are joint authors. What we call the lead author is the first name. So that's Garcia. Then the next line is principal co-authors, and we do principal co-authors. First line is in the House of Origin. So here, Assemblymember Wood is the one principal co-author for both houses. If there were Senate principal co-authors, they'd be on the next line. The next line is then co-authors House of Origin. So Assembly members Addis, Robert Rivas, and Zabur. And then all in boldface. Remember House of Origin in boldface. Then we have the co-authors for the other house, and here we have the senators. These are all in alphabetical order. Principal co-authors, House of Origin, then second house. So you can have multiple lines in some instances. Remember this bill, just a whole bunch of joint authors, okay? Next, underneath is the date of introduction. This bill, February 10th, 2022, that was the day it was introduced in the California State Assembly and given this bill number 1951. Next, we have what we call the title of the bill. And the title has several component parts. The first it's going to tell you, does this bill add, amend, and or repeal what code section from what code? And then it has the relating clause, sometimes called the relating to clause. And then lastly, are there any special provisions, like does it take effect immediately, for example, or does it make an appropriation? Those will all be part of the title. Now this one is short, right? An act to amend, add, repeal, that's the proper order. Section 6377.1, so that's the code section of the Revenue and Taxation Code. So that's the code, one of the 29 codes where all the statutes are. Relating to, okay, it's a tax bill, so they always use relating to taxation. The relating clause is generally a broad statement: economic development, transportation, education, taxation. In the subject, we'll get a little more detailed. And then does it have anything special about it? Well, this, because it's deemed a tax levy, where you're changing what's called the base rate or burden of a tax, that's what constitutes a tax levy. Tax levies are one of 4 types of bills that take effect immediately. Okay, the others are urgency clauses, the budget bill and bills related to the budget, and then bills calling an election. So we note that it's to take effect immediately, comma, tax levy. So we're told. This is only one code section. Look at this bill, 1373. That's got a paragraph. An act to amend a public contract code, to amend and add public resources code, to amend and add public utilities code, to amend, add water code relating to energy. Oh, this has multiple provisions. Making an appropriation therefore, declaring the urgency thereof, which means it takes effect immediately. So we'll find out more about that in what is called the plus sections later on. Now, next up is the Legislative Council's Digest. In the Legislative Council, the Office of Legislative Counsel, there are bill drafters in the California Legislature, and they provide a very helpful digest. It is a nonpartisan, independent explanation of what is existing law and what does this bill propose to do to that existing law. It always begins with existing law, and then when it explains, it always begins with this bill would. So it's easy to find. Right there, existing sales and use tax laws, and then it explains what's existing law. This bill, existing law requires the state energy, basically the Energy Commission, to do such and such, existing law. Then it's always followed by this bill would. This bill would, on and after January 1, 2023 and before January 1, 2028, make a full exemption for purchases of manufacturing type equipment, et cetera, et cetera. This bill would. Now, this tax bill has several different provisions, and so they actually have three different bits of existing law, and the next paragraph is always this bill would. So existing law requires any bill authorizing a new tax expenditure, blah, blah, blah. This bill would require CDTFA. It also has the last line, some explanatory things. Remember, this bill's a tax levy. So what's the last line? This bill would take effect immediately as a tax levy. So it tells you right there. So it told you at the end of the title, way up top. It also told you in the explanatory Legislative Council's digest. At the end of the digest are the 4 digest keys. Some people call them vote key. The vote key is the first one. There are 3 others. So they're properly called digest keys. What are the digest keys? The first one is vote. That means what is the vote required for passage of this bill? This tax bill is majority vote. This energy related bill, because it's an urgency statute, that requires a supermajority. So this one is keyed a 2/3 vote bill. The next requirement is appropriation. That's a no or a yes. Yes, it makes an appropriation. No, it does not. An appropriation is always called out in, of course, the text of the bill, but even the text of the Legislative Council Digest. It's easy to know. The third digest key is fiscal committee. Does this bill have to be re-referred to the Senate or Assembly Appropriations Committee, which is our fiscal committee, even though they don't really appropriate so much, but they consider the fiscal impact. This is determined by Office of Legislative Counsel pursuant to Joint Rule 10.5. It dictates what requires a bill to be keyed fiscal. So that would be a yes. If it meets one of the four requirements of Joint Rule 10.5, it's keyed yes. If it doesn't have to get re-referred to fiscal committee, then it says a no. And then the last one is what we call the local program. So this one is a yes, and it's a state mandated local program. Note on the Senate bill, or on some bills, not all, sorry, on some bills it says state mandated local program, and in others it just says local program, and that's a yes or a no as well. So the first one is vote, majority, 2/3, or something different, which is a rarity. And then appropriation, yes or no. Fiscal committee, yes or no. State mandated local program, yes or no. What comes next? What we call the enacting clause. Our government code requires it. The people of the state of California do enact as follows. Every bill pursuant to the state government code. In other states, it's often in the Constitution. In California, it's in the government code. What does it say? The people of the state of California do enact as follows. It is required or the bill is invalid. And then we get into the sections. Look at this one. Section 1, this is an action line, we call it. Section 10295.6 of the Public Contract Code is amended to read. So what are we being told? This is the section of the Public Contract Code that is being amended. That's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to read. Now this tax bill is a little different. It has a section 1 that has uncodified language. Sometimes a bill makes legislative findings and declarations, or it has statements of legislative intent. This one, the legislature finds and declares, and then it finds and declares 4 different things, A, B, C, and D. So these are in uncodified, meaning they're not in one of the 29 codes like revenue and taxation, like public resources, welfare and institutions, etc. Okay. In the tax bill, section 2, now we are actually amending a statute. And what does it say? Again, the action line, section 6377.1, that's the code section of the Revenue and Taxation Code. That's one of the 29 codes, Rev and Tax, is amended to read. So it is amending an existing code, 6377.1. This could say section 6377.1 of the revenue is added to the Revenue and Taxation Code to read, or it could say it's being repealed, okay? But here we know that it's being amended. And now we have the actual language of that code section. Now here's one of the nifty things in a bill. We are required in the California Legislature, the joint rules say this actually, that when we're repealing language, we must strike through that language. And when we're adding new language, we use italics or italicized language, okay? When you read it on the internet, on the Leg Info website, it's even better. It's in color. So the red is for repeal. It's striking out the language. So you see the strike through, but you also see the red text. On the other hand, down in this paragraph, we're adding new language. So not only is it in italicized language, but also it's in blue type. Okay? So when you're repealing, the strikeout words are being repealed from existing law here. And here we're doing both. We're striking out years 2022 through 2023 inclusive, and we're adding years beginning in 2022. So the blue italicized is we're adding new language to this existing statute, and we're deleting or repealing this red strike-through language. The regular type that remains pure black and is not strike-through or strike-out, and it's not italicized, that's existing law and it remains the same, okay? So regular font words are used for an existing statute in general. In section 3 of this tax bill, what do we have? We're adding something. Section 6377.1 is added to the Revenue and Taxation Code to read. So here in section 3 of this bill, we're going to add new language. In this energy bill, AB 1373, we're doing the same. Section 9 says section 913.21 is added to the Public Utilities Code to read, and then it's new language, okay? The last part is what we call plus sections. These are also uncodified. So remember section 1 of the tax bill had those statements of legislative findings and declarations. Those are not in the actual code. You won't find them in the Revenue and Taxation Code, but they're still a statute because they were enacted as part of the bill and signed into law, but they're uncodified, meaning that they're not in one of those 29 codes. The tax bill has 2 plus sections, 2 uncodified provisions. One is existing Revenue and Taxation Code 2230 requires the state to reimburse local agencies for any lost sales tax revenue for an exemption. Here they say, we're not making an appropriation and we're not paying the locals back. The second thing it says is it's telling us this is a tax levy, so it takes effect immediately. Section 7, this act provides for a tax levy within the meaning of Article 4 of the California Constitution and shall go into immediate effect. That Energy Bill 1373, it has 2 sections 17 and 18 are uncodified. One is a reimbursement disclaimer. Again, it says no reimbursement is required just because it's creating a new crime or expanding an existing one. The second thing is it has an urgency clause, so it takes effect immediately. Remember, we learned that in the title of the bill, to take effect immediately, urgency, okay? An urgency clause always begins with, this act is an urgency statute necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety within the meaning of Article 4 of the California Constitution and shall go into immediate effect. The facts constituting the necessity are, every urgency clause will have that first paragraph. The second paragraph where they explain the urgency, that's whatever the Legislative Council drafts. This one says to ensure the procurement of eligible energy resources that the state needs to meet its reliability needs, etc. That's why it has to take effect immediately. So again, those are examples from both bills of what we call plus sections. They're uncodified. Not every bill has a plus section. Certainly many don't have multiple ones, like these 2 bills both had 2 of them. Some don't have any plus sections at all. So that's basically how to read a bill in the California Legislature, from the very top of the bill to the very end of the bill. Obviously, the meat are those provisions that are adding new sections, amending existing sections, and or repealing existing code sections. And those you'll have to read and understand what they're doing to the actual statutory language, but that's how you read a California bill. I hope that was helpful.